Welcome to Reformed Thinking. So, think about this for a second. You would never try to rewire your own house without calling a licensed electrician.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you look at a sparking outlet and you just step back.
Right, because you do not want to burn the whole structure down.
Yeah, and it is the same with something like performing surgery on a family member.
Yeah, you just do not do that. You lack the medical license, the sterile environment, and, the anatomical knowledge.
Right. In almost every area of modern life, when the stakes are really high, we operate on a strict assumption of professionalization.
We hand the problem over to a certified licensed guild.
We do. And we just assume that is the safest, most responsible way to handle things.
But today, for our deep dive, we are looking at a text that totally flips that assumption on its head.
It really does. It is quite staggering.
We are taking a microscopic look at a single sentence from the Apostle Paul, Romans chapter 15, verse 14.
Yeah, just one verse.
And we are pulling from two really comprehensive theological treatises for this deep dive. One is called Able to Admonish, Mature Grace, and Mutual Ministry.
And the other is competence and counsel, sovereign grace and body sufficiency.
Right. And the core mission for you, the listener, as we go through this material, is to see how this one modest verse systematically dismantles a lot of modern assumptions.
Assumptions about church life, counseling, and what spiritual maturity actually looks like.
Yeah, because the claim coming from these sources is pretty shocking. They argued that the local church, just ordinary believers sitting in the pews, are completely equipped to handle the emotional and spiritual care of one another.
Without needing to outsource that care to secular psychology.
If we're even restricting it just to a professional class of clergy.
Right. But, I mean, to really grasp the gravity of Paul's claim in Romans 15:14, we first have to look at the current state of the visible church.
Because it is a stark contrast, right?
Oh, massive. The modern church suffers from a severe crisis of confidence. Instead of functioning as an active army of priests, the treatises argue that the modern visible church often acts as a passive gathering of consumeristic spectators.
Consumeristic spectators, that is a heavy phrase.
It is. I mean, people show up to receive religious goods from professionals, but they do not see themselves as qualified to help each other.
And there are some alarming statistics from 2026 that really back this up.
Yeah, let's look at those.
So, the American Bible Society reports that 68% of Americans read Scripture less than once a month.
Less than once a month.
Right. And only 18% engage with it more than once a week.
Wow. So you have a vast majority of people completely disconnected from the text.
Exactly. And the Ligonier Ministries survey reveals a massive theological drift, too.
Right, the State of Theology survey.
Yeah. They found that 86% of American adults believe man is good by nature.
86%.
And 66% hold that personal works secure a right standing before God.
So if you believe human beings are inherently good, your whole view of counseling changes.
How so?
Well, you no longer view human problems as a result of total depravity or rebellion against a holy God. You start viewing sin as just a lack of self-esteem or trauma or a failure of a person's environment.
Our sources actually use a very specific phrase for this mindset. They call it a pelvic anthropology.
Which is quite a descriptive term.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, an anthropology is just a doctrine of what it means to be human, right?
Right.
So a pelvic anthropology means society has decided that human identity is located primarily in our lower appetites.
We are defined by our base desires, our biological impulses, and our sexual or emotional urges.
So if you think a human being is just a highly evolved animal driven by impulses, you treat their problems clinically.
You send them to a secular professional guild.
Right. Because of this theological illiteracy and this pelvic anthropology, modern congregations assume they are structurally deficient.
They assume they have to outsource shepherding.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. It is like we have a fully stocked, state-of-the-art kitchen at home. We have the best appliances, fresh ingredients, everything.
Right.
But we are completely convinced we do not know how to boil water. So we outsource every single family dinner to a restaurant.
That is a great way to picture it. What's fascinating here is how this bleak modern landscape contrasts with Paul's breathtaking assessment of the Roman believers.
Yeah, let's look at what Paul actually says to them.
He tells them they are full of goodness, filled with all knowledge, able also to admonish one another.
Which is just a stunning validation.
It is a sovereign grace validation of the local body's structural competency.
Well, wait, I have to push back a little here. Is Paul just using apostolic flattery?
What do you mean?
Well, he wants them to fund his upcoming trip to Spain, right? So is he just buttering them up before asking for a massive favor?
It is a fair question, but no. Paul wasn't just flattering an ideal, pristine church. His confidence is actually shocking because of the intense historical friction this specific congregation was experiencing right at that exact moment.
Right, the historical pressure cooker of first century Rome.
Exactly. So let's set the historical stage. Paul writes this letter in the winter of AD 57.
He is writing from Corinth, right?
Yeah, at the home of Gaius. He is planning to take a relief offering to Jerusalem before finally visiting Rome and heading to Spain.
And Paul did not plant this church in Rome.
No, he didn't. It likely grew organically from converts at Pentecost who returned to the imperial capital.
But then there was a massive disruption.
A huge one. The Emperor Claudius issued an edict in AD 49 that banished all Jews from Rome.
And this was over riots, right?
Yes. The historian Suetonius says the riots were instigated by Chrestus, which was basically a Roman misunderstanding of Christus or Christ.
So Jewish believers like Aquila and Priscilla had to just pack up and leave.
Overnight. So for 5 years, the church in Rome was exclusively Gentile.
Wow.
Yeah, and during that time, they abandoned Jewish customs. They weren't keeping the Sabbath or dietary laws.
But then in AD 54, Claudius dies.
Right, Claudius dies, the edict lapses, and the Jewish Christians return.
To a church they barely recognized.
Completely. I mean, think about the lived reality of these believers. You have returning Jewish Christians with strict consciences about holy days and Levitical associations.
And they're sitting next to Gentile Christians, eating pork and exercising Christian liberty.
Exactly. They were literally fighting over diets and holy days. Plus, Rome itself was a city of pagan idolatry, Stoicism, Epicureanism, and they were under the tyrannical eye of Nero.
So if this church is essentially in a cultural civil war between returning Jewish believers and the new Gentile majority, how can Paul look at a divided room and declare they have the capacity to counsel each other?
Seems crazy, right?
Yeah, it really does.
But Paul doesn't view them through the lens of their temporary cultural skirmishes.
Okay, so how does he view them?
Through their shared new covenant identity. He is saying the grace of Christ is sufficient for congregational maturity, even in a really complex, fractured metropolis like Rome.
So his confidence isn't random.
Not at all. In fact, it is the deliberate climax of the most famous theological letter ever written.
Let's look at the literary hinge here, because our sources point out that Paul is moving doctrine off the shelf.
Right. Let's review the structure of Romans. Chapters 1 through 11 lay down this massive theological foundation.
Universal human depravity.
Yes. Justification by faith alone, which is sola fide,
Union with Christ.
and God's sovereign election. He lays down all this heavy dogmatic theology.
But then in chapter 12, things shift.
Right. Chapters 12 through 15 shift to ethics.
He talks about offering bodies as living sacrifices, submitting to authorities.
And crucial for this context, resolving the dispute between the weak Jewish believers with dietary scruples and the strong Gentile believers.
And then we hit Romans 15:14. The sources call this the great transitional hinge.
Yeah, Paul shifts from being a dogmatic theologian to a warm, strategic pastor.
He is validating the church. He says he wrote boldly not because they are ignorant, but to trigger the resources they already possess.
Which totally refutes those modern critical scholars who claim Paul didn't trust the Roman Church's theology.
He trusts them completely. And here's where it gets really interesting to me. All that heavy theology in the first 11 chapters, it wasn't meant for an academic exam.
No, not at all.
It is the actual raw material they're supposed to use to care for each other.
Precisely. The doctrine is the tool you use to do the soul care.
But if the local church is supposed to counsel itself, what qualifies a believer to step into a brother or sister's messy life?
Well, Paul doesn't just leave it open to anyone. He outlines 2 non-negotiable divine prerequisites.
Right. So let's get into the grammatical exegesis from the sources. This is the prerequisite hardware.
Let's start with the first word, persuaded. In Greek, that is pepismai.
Pepismai.
Yeah, it is a perfect passive indicative.
Okay, so what does that actually mean for us?
The perfect tense means it is Paul's settled conviction. It isn't a passing feeling. And the passive voice means it was produced by the Holy Spirit.
Based on observable fruit in their lives.
Right. God persuaded Paul of this. And he is persuaded of 2 things. First, that they are full of goodness.
The Greek word there is agathosine, right?
Yes. And it is a rare, distinctly biblical term. It is not passive politeness.
And it is not the Greek civic virtue, arbeit, either.
Correct. Arbeit was about human achievement and looking respectable to society.
Mm.
Agathocene is an active, supernatural moral excellence.
So it is an active drive that aggressively seeks the spiritual welfare of others.
Exactly. Even if it is difficult or culturally unpopular.
And the second prerequisite is that they are filled with all knowledge.
The Greek phrase is pepleromenoi passes nosios.
Which the sources point out is a divine passive again.
Yes, they have been filled by God. And this knowledge isn't some mystical secret. It is the objective, systematic truth of the gospel.
Now, why do these two, goodness and knowledge, have to coexist?
Because if you separate them, things go very wrong. Goodness without knowledge is just shallow, sentimental moralism.
Right. You might want to help someone, but you just end up hugging them all the way to destruction because you don't know the truth.
Yeah, it is a blind compassion. On the flip side, knowledge without goodness is cold, arrogant intellectualism.
You just crush people with dry dogma.
Right. You have the truth, but you lack the character to administer it.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener sitting in the pew? I like to think of it like a surgeon.
Okay.
You need the surgical knowledge of the anatomy, that is the truth, the doctrine.
Right.
But you also need a sterile environment and a real desire to heal the patient. That is the goodness.
That makes perfect sense.
If you have a dirty scalpel or you just want to show off how well you cut, you will kill the patient.
Yeah, you need
Right.
both. And when active goodness and objective knowledge combine, they produce a specific action that modern Christianity has almost completely abandoned.
Mutual admonition, the lost art of admonition.
The Greek word is nouthete.
We hear nouthetic counseling sometimes. Let's break that word down.
It is derived from nous, which means mind, and tithemi, which means to put. So it literally means to place in the mind.
So it is the confrontational application of biblical truth to a brother or sister's life.
Meant to turn them from sin.
Yeah.
Yes. It is much stronger than just comfort, which is parakaleo.
Or just general teaching, which is didasco.
Right. Admonition is a moral confrontation.
Yeah.
And the key here is that this mutual ministry belongs to the whole congregation.
The one another's.
Yes. It is not locked away for an elite class of spiritual specialists or ordained leaders.
And the sources highlight how this really challenges two major errors in church history.
First, it challenges Roman Catholic sacerdotalism.
Which is the idea that spiritual care is locked behind a professional priesthood.
Right. It creates an artificial barrier between the believer and the means of grace. But Romans 15:14 shatters that barrier.
And the second error is modern psychotherapeutic integrationism.
Yeah, this is a huge one today. This is the attempt to blend biblical theology with secular psychology.
But the sources say those foundations are completely hostile to each other.
They are. Think about the architects of modern psychology, Freud and Skinner. They operate from godless, naturalistic, and evolutionary foundations.
Freud viewed sin as repressed urges, and Skinner viewed man as a biological machine responding to stimuli.
Right. They view man as an animal and sin as a disease.
So if you use a naturalistic tool to diagnose a spiritual problem, you will get a false cure.
Precisely. But here is the hard question, and I'm sure listeners are thinking about this.
Yeah.
Doesn't commanding a bunch of lay people to admonish each other just create a toxic, censorious culture?
A culture of spiritual policing and judgmentalism.
Right. The world already thinks Christians are hypocritical fault finders. Won't this just tear churches apart?
It is a valid concern. But the sources countered this by bringing it right back to the context of Romans chapter 14.
Right before our key verse.
Yes. Paul just finished warning them against weaponizing their consciences over doubtful matters.
Like eating meat or observing certain days.
Exactly. So admonition must be governed by Scripture, not by personal preferences or political instincts.
It aims at restoration, not humiliation. You are coming alongside someone as a fellow sinner under grace.
But even with those boundaries, this is a massive responsibility. I mean, naturally, we are defensive, selfish people.
We are.
So how is a community of naturally depraved humans supposed to actually do this without destroying each other?
Well, they can't. Not naturally. It would be impossible unless something supernatural had occurred to rewire the community.
So we are talking about the Christological engine of church care.
Yes. This capability is a direct result of union with Christ and his ascension gifts.
The treatises tie this back to the new covenant promises in the Old Testament.
They do. Specifically passages like Jeremiah 31 and Ezekiel 36.
Where God promises to remove the heart of stone and give a heart of flesh.
And where the law is written on the heart, and the Spirit indwells all believers, making them a royal priesthood.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, under the Old Covenant, Care was highly centralized.
Yeah, in the Levitical priesthood, you had to go to a specific tribe at a specific temple.
But in the New Covenant, that old national clerical economy is completely shattered.
Every believer has the Spirit,
Hmm.
and Christ actually communicates his ongoing offices to the church.
What does that look like practically?
Well, as prophet, Christ speaks truth through the admonition of the believers.
And as king, he rules and corrects his sheep through the loving confrontation of the saints. I love that. It is like we are the physical hands and vocal cords of Christ on earth.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
When a friend pulls you aside to warn you about a bitter attitude, that isn't just a human giving advice.
No, it is the chief shepherd actively shepherding you through them.
So, bringing this ancient text into the reality of the modern church requires a total paradigm shift.
A massive shift in how we view Sunday mornings and our relationships with fellow believers.
Our sources lay out some really radical applications for today,
The first one is a firm rejection of secular psychology for the care of souls.
meaning we need to stop sending suffering believers to secular therapists who operate from those godless, naturalistic foundations.
Right. The church has the necessary resources in the Word and the Spirit.
The second application is uprooting seeker-sensitive pragmatism.
This is huge. The church is not a corporate business designed to entertain the unregenerate.
If your goal is just to keep people comfortable so they return, you will never produce a congregation capable of admonishing one another.
We have to return to heavy doctrinal training and catechesis to fix the biblical illiteracy crisis.
People need the objective knowledge we talked about earlier.
Yeah. And the third application is activating the laity.
Believers must kill the idol of extreme privacy.
We love our privacy today. My life is none of your business.
But the biblical answer to, am I my brother's keeper, is yes.
Yes, you are. We have to view admonition as the highest expression of Christian love.
The therapeutic spirit of our age says, my feelings are sovereign, never correct me.
But true admonition requires a church culture where relationships are deep enough for correction to actually be credible.
You can't just drop a heavy correction on someone you only say hello to once a month.
No, it requires life-on-life investment.
So I want to ask you, the listener, to really reflect on this. Who is spiritually helped by your words?
It is a sobering question.
Who would drift more easily into worldliness if you chose to stay silent?
If we remain silent just to avoid an awkward conversation, we are failing to love our brothers and sisters.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, we have looked at Paul's breathtaking vision for the church in Romans 15:14.
A vision of a mature community filled with sovereign grace.
Saturated in objective truth.
And brave enough to speak hard words and love to one another.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We constantly judge a church's success by the eloquence of the man behind the pulpit.
Or the quality of the music on the stage.
But what if the truest measure of a church's supernatural health is actually something else entirely?
What if it is the quiet, difficult, loving, and corrective conversations happening between ordinary members in the parking lot after the service is over?
That is the real metric of a healthy body. Thanks for joining us on Reformed Thinking.